if you would kindly give a warm round of applause for Mr. Stephen Preisman, Confessions of an Ad Man.
Thank you. I wanted to thank Mr. Kinney for bringing me in. I really appreciate everything that he does at the school. He really goes above and beyond the curriculum, and the things that you're given in the brief are never the most interesting things that you do. It's always like the things like when you go above and beyond that you get some of the best stuff, and I really appreciate everything Jim is doing. And yeah, I didn't have any of your classes ever, but I could tell you were cool. I could tell. Anyways, and I noticed this Confessions of an Ad Man background here. It was created by Jim. It's obviously based on Saul Bass, kind of style, like the 60s advertising look. I wish I could say, if anyone has watched Mad Men, that the advertising world is anything like that. It's bad and good. It's good if you're like a white dude. It's bad if you're like anyone else, I guess. But it's nothing like that. But I'll delve into what it is like a bit later on. Let me get into my presentation. I'm going to just go through my presentation here, and then at the end, if anyone has any questions, you can ask me absolutely anything. So I'll try to make it relatively quick so that we have time for questions, because I think that's more interesting to people in the end anyway. I'm calling this presentation here Thinking About Working. I guess you'll see why. First, before I get into anything, I want to just talk a little bit about myself so that you know, who is this stranger talking to me, have a little idea, so maybe what I say afterwards will be a little more impactful. So when I was young, I was really obsessed with video games, and I still am. Love them. So when it came time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was in high school. But I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I had a feeling I want to make video games. So I went to the University of Waterloo for computer science, because I thought, it's the best way to make video games. You want to code, right? That was the first place my mind went, and I was pretty good at math at the time. I've forgotten it all since. But I really hated it from the get-go. I hated it from the beginning. I was looking for any escape from class. I joined a fraternity. I worked out at the gym 4 hours a day, just played a lot of video games, just anything to not be in class. And I thought that was a normal thing. And evidently it wasn't, because what happened was I dropped out, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I thought maybe I would go back to school, but instead, in the meantime, while I had the year off, I put out a Craigslist ad asking who wanted to make a video game. So this is all tied to video games. I'm pretty nerdy, as you can tell. So I received some responses from people, and we started making a video game. And one of the people that I met was a designer who's actually an alum from this school, Patrick Lowe. I'm sure nobody here knows him, but he's an amazing designer. And I decided to follow in his footsteps and go to design school, to this school, because that's where he went. And it was 3 years instead of 4, like OCAD, and it was cheaper. And they had this new building. I was like, that's cool. So I came here. And that's the first time when I really realized that there was something I was passionate about. I wasn't always excited about all the specific assignments, but I was excited about design, and I was always messing around. And I realized that if I did want to make video games, then I could do it on the creative end of things. I could draw the stuff for it, which is actually what I'm doing now on the side. But before that, I went here, and then there was a class called Studio Lab, and a creative director from an agency, a now defunct agency called Wonderman, named Alan Kwong. He came to the school, and he took a look at everyone's portfolios, and mine was one of them, and then he just offered me a job at Wonderman. And that was pretty cool. That was really nice. I didn't even consider advertising at the time. I didn't even know that was an option, much like I didn't know design was an option coming out of high school. I really envy people that go into design right out of high school, because they know right away that they wanted to do that. I feel like I've lost years Of course, it's not the case. You know, I've learned a lot by going to university, but I do feel like okay, I'm 33 now. If I would have started in design school straight up, maybe I would have been like a creative director by now, but can't think that way. I'm doing all right. Yeah, that's basically where I'm at now. Since then, I've worked at all kinds of big agencies like Rethink, Sidley, McLaren McCann, Crispin Porter Boguski, also defunct. It's a fun story how that one went out of business. Yeah, here I am now. I'm now senior art director at an agency called The Hive. I'm not sure if anyone knows of it. Does anyone here know The Hive? It's like on King Street. Yeah, cool. There you go. There's one too. That's where I'm at now. So, does anyone want to see my work? Is it like, or you've seen it already? I can show a couple. I can show a couple things. Just here. Let's get out of this. I'll just go to my website. Just so you have an idea of my style and all that. So this is my website, which is like pretty clean, just straight to the point, which is kind of goes along with my design philosophy. Let the work speak for itself. Get straight to the point. So like one thing that I worked on was the Entertainment One rebranding. I was like the lead on the team that did that. So what happened was, this was their old logo. I'm not sure if anyone here knows the old does anyone even know the company E1? They do a lot, but you never know about them. They're like in the shadows, but they do everything. They're a big movie company, and the ask was to do something that was close to this logo over here, not too far, but also that reads E1 and Entertainment One instead of Eoni and Entertainment Tone, and also less ugly. So the solve that we came with was to retain this kind of lens, I guess you can call it, this shape that they have. Just modernize the color a little bit. The color looks bad here because the color's a little bit messed up on here, but kept that shape and separated the E out of the box so that it could read E1. They also, they wanted to transition from Entertainment One to E1 over time. So we have two versions of the logo. And now today you can see it at the top of this building. I don't know if you ever pass it by. They really messed this part up. It's so much more faint than this part here, but that's not my problem. That was some engineers that did that. And then the idea was to kind of leverage this element throughout their advertisement. So this is like just from the early concept stages. They didn't even end up using this, as is the case 90% of the time. What you create just like doesn't even get used or is butchered. But delivering one television hit after another, the #1 indie music brand in North America. So pretty safe stuff. But then where it got kind of fun, also unused, is in how the shape is used. So over here you have a scene of New York, for example, which is just some scene I got off of Google. And then you'll notice that like when you make a movie, like what do you call these hands over here, right? They don't really have a name. So the idea was to kind of appropriate those hands so people would know them as the E1 hands. And when the hands go over it, you see like a scene of like flying, like aliens invading New York. Or if you have a scene here, they have E1 music. So here's someone singing karaoke. The hands go over it, and she becomes Lady Gaga with like fireworks exploding out of her brassiere. So that's a concept that I worked on. They wanted to go safe in the end. So this is the trailer that you may see in movies. At the movies. You guys ever see that? Pretty boring. It looks nice, right? But it's safe. But the idea that I had, this is a rougher kind of concept. I really like this idea here of making it something more interesting and memorable. So this is something that we proposed to them that they didn't go with. And it's still rough, like it could have changed, but. So those are like fake bad hands, but that's the idea. Making the hands their thing in the same way that the Warner movie lot is the Warner thing, the mountain is a thing for Paramount. Anyway, that's one project that I worked on. Another really cool one is, let's see here, for Kia. I guess I'll just present this one. So for Kia, they just gave us like a whole bunch of money and they said we could do whatever we want for Luminato. And so what we did was we built this giant arcade set. I created the artwork for it. I hired my friend Patrick Lowe to actually create the game itself. And we created this huge display in front of Roy Thompson Hall. And the idea here originally was that you could go in the car and that the steering wheel for the car would be the steering wheel for the game. But we didn't have time or money for that. So there's just like a giant steering wheel behind instead. You can kind of see it over there. And we made this really cool game, and we made it in like a month and a half. So see, I kind of got to live out my video game making dreams somehow. And this is kind of what ended up happening. It's not the most exciting video because we didn't have great footage, so we had to improvise. We had to improvise something out of the footage that we had. So this is the station here, and then the cool part is the actual game. It'll show up. This is us testing it out, and then let me see. It'll get somewhere in a second. And we got Kid Koala, the DJ, to make the music for it. So this is the actual game here. Oh yeah, there you go. And it was to advertise the Kia Forte, and there was an advertisement where the Kia splatted a bug, and so we made that's Kid Koala there. And yeah, we made this video game that actually this is something that I learned early on in my career, because this came a little bit earlier in my career, but we did not document this well. Like, we had such huge crowds around this thing, and we didn't think to get a photographer or to get, and so I'm left with actually not the best representation of the project. So you basically at this point have to like take my word for it that it's cool. But yeah, so that's another project that I did. In general, I try to do stuff that's fun. I try to think about, like, no one wants to see advertisements. So I just try to think, like, what's the thing that people can stand the most? What's something that people would actually enjoy? So that was my thinking with making a video game or making, just fun stuff. I try not to take advertising too seriously. That's kind of my philosophy. Keep it simple and fun. So anyways, now that that part's out of the way, all right, I'll get into my actual presentation. There you go. How am I doing so far? Am I doing all right? Cool. All right. Nice. So anyways, basically, I was thinking about what I should talk about when I came here. And I was thinking, should I talk about like design-specific things or advertising-specific things? And really what I wanted to talk about was the thing that would be most useful to the people that are here. And the thing that people want the most is a good job in advertising or design, and to be happy and have a successful career. That's the thing that matters the most to people. So I've graduated about 6 years ago from school, and I try to think about what I'm going to give you here basically are my thoughts that I've gathered over the past 6 years that hopefully will give you a little bit of a head start, so you don't need those 6 years of mistakes that I had, as little as possible, so that you can get a job, hopefully. So one thing that I wanted to mention is that this presentation is also, it's geared more towards, I feel that there's kind of two categories of designers, to be honest, or creative people in general. So there's the people that they go to their jobs from like 9 to 5, and that's their job. And then they're out of there. And then after 5 o'clock and the weekend, that's their real life, And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like there's some people in my office that they're print producers, and they just do like really simple stuff. It has to be punctual and organized. They're punctual and organized. They do their work, but they're not passionate designers. They have the most interesting hobbies outside of work. And they're keeping themselves fulfilled that way. And that's a great thing. But this talk, I can only speak from my own experiences, and I really am passionate about what I do in my work as well. Like my work, I have to do what I love for work. I can't not do something that I love for work. So this presentation is geared to the people that are like the 24-hour designers, not the 9-to-5 designers. Hence this slide. See, it makes sense now. I actually intentionally try to make this presentation as ugly as possible so that you can focus on me instead of on here. See, here's another ugly slide here. It's for the passionate people. Look at this. I just Googled the word passionate, and this is like the picture I got. It's like, it's pretty amazing. So yeah, this is something that I was kind of getting at before with regards to my design philosophy. This is what I was going to talk about at first. I just wanted to give this like 1 minute before I got into things, because I think it's a really neat word, and I just wanted to, it didn't fit anywhere else, so I'm just sticking it in here. But lagom, does anyone know about lagom? Forgive me if I'm not mispronouncing it. You know about it? Are you Swedish? No? Okay. Well, it's a Swedish word. Some languages have these great words that English doesn't have, that we should have. And one of them is lagom. So it means not too little, not too much, just right. So like, it's like the Goldilocks, the Goldilocks word. And it's a really good approach when thinking about design. I really feel that one of the big mistakes that people make is they just try to do too much. I think that quite often you want to you can stay simple and sweet and to the point, and more often than not, that's enough. You don't need to get crazy. And I'm talking both like in the messaging and in the superficial stuff. It really is okay to stay clean and simple. The main thing in design is you want to convey the message. And that's the most important thing. Design is art with purpose. Or it's using artistic techniques, but giving it purpose. And this is a good word to remember. So I just threw it in here. But now I'm going to get into my actual presentation. I'm meandering a little bit. I'm a little bit of a rambler kind of guy. But I want to talk about mindfulness. And I really feel like this is the area where I've really improved the most, or I should say, this is the tool that I've developed the most that has enabled me to become better at everything else that I do. And that is being mindful. So I just put Yoda's picture there because it seems like something Yoda would say, like, be mindful, you must, I'll just pull a quote from Sam Harris. He described it pretty nicely, I feel. Mindfulness is a state of open, non-judgmental, and non-discursive attention to the contents of consciousness. So in this instance, he's talking specifically about consciousness, but really this applies to anything that you do. This applies to anything in your life. You want to scrutinize the shit out of everything, out of yourself, out of your work, every moment along the way. So I'll get into more detail what I'm talking about. So the first thing is to know the competition. This is such another great picture I found on Google under graphic designer. Look at this graphic designer. He's in the most graphic designy room with his Pantone swatch book right by his side. I don't think I've ever used the Pantone swatch book before. But yeah, so the first thing is to know your competition. You want to know where you stand. Right? You want to know, how good am I right now? Honestly, right? And I understand that a lot of you are students, so I'm not saying you have to be the best right now, but you still want to know where you stand. So where is the competition stand? Your fellow peers in school, where do you rank among them? Or people like me that are in the business, right? How good are these people in the business, right? Or even further along the way, how good are legendary designers like Michael Beirut, right? And for those of you who don't know, Michael Beirut, he's a designer and partner at Pentagram, which is one of the most famous design agencies in the world. It's based in New York. He's the guy who invented one of the greatest logos in the world, the Hillary Clinton H, which is why is it the greatest? Because everyone knows it. You can draw it from memory. A child could draw it. And it's the most memorable thing about her campaign. I admire it a lot. This is what I'm talking about, lagom, simplicity. Everyone's trying to do crazy things, and sometimes the answer is simple. Sometimes, not always. But so after you really think about how good the competition is, and this is really hard to do, to do in an honest way. It's very hard to be honest with yourself. It's very hard to ask your friends for honest opinions because your friends are going to bullshit you. They'll just say, "Oh yeah, everything's great," So you have to I remember when I was in school, so many people hated on Jerry Johnson. This is going to a nice place, I swear. Because Jerry Johnson can give you mean feedback sometimes, but I really appreciate her honesty and her this feedback, this criticism is so much more useful than the positive feedback that you get from people. Oh, it's great, When people tell you what's shitty, then that's stuff that that you can fix. Taking all of that. See, I'm kind of going out of order here. Know where you stand. Look at the competition. Know where you stand. And when I say competition, I don't mean that you should think of everyone as your enemy, right? But the fact of the matter is that these are people that you're competing for jobs, and you want to be the best. Friendly competition is all right. You want to know where you stand and take criticism. See, Gordon Ramsay, another person that people hate on, but he just gives people honest feedback. They tell him to come to their restaurant, and they're like, "Please help my shitty restaurant." Then he comes and gives them feedback. And then they're like, "We hate you, Gordon Ramsay." Why did you tell him to come? Why did you tell him to come? He cares. He cares, just like Jerry Johnson. All right, I'm going on a tangent here. But anyways, after you really assess the situation, after you really assess the landscape, you can kind of build a graph, right? So I'm putting myself in the middle here. Obviously, this is not perfectly mathematically representational here. But you can kind of get an idea of where you are right now, where someone in the business that's been in the business for 6 years is at, and where the superstars of design are at. And then you have to think to yourself. You have to think to yourself, honestly, what are my ambitions? Where do you want to be? Another amazing stock photo. And different people have different ambitions, right? Some people's ambitions are crazy. Some people aren't that good and they want to be Michael Beirut, and some people are amazing, but they don't aspire to much, That's your prerogative, but you still want to have some sort of goal. And your goals can change along the way. You can meet your goal and then build a new goal, but you definitely want some kind of ambition. For example, I want a job. That's a good ambition. Or you could be more specific. I want a job at an ad agency, or more specifically, I want a job at one of these top 10 ad agencies, right? And then you have to think to yourself, how much work do I need to do to get to that place? And like I said, all of this seems very simple. It seems I know what I'm saying might be obvious. It's even obvious to me, but actually putting this into practice and really, really thinking internally and just thinking all the time, knowing how to think is a skill. It's in itself that you can develop. So this is a slide here of a pyramid scheme. And the reason I bring this up is because pyramid schemes are bad, right? Obviously. The way you get to the top of the pyramid scheme is bad. It's through dishonesty. But the fact of the matter is that this structure is pretty much the structure of any company. How you get there is more honest. But there's only one Michael Beirut. There's however many hundreds of creative directors. There's however many thousands of senior art directors, and there's so many millions of juniors, right? So the higher your goals are, the harder you're going to have to work. So when you go back to the diagram that I talked about before, you can now look at it in a different way. You can look at it like this. From you to me, or not me, but some guy in the business, right, is this many years of effort. I'm saying 10, from the beginning of school. And then it's another 30 years of effort. Everyone wants immediate results, but the results are not immediate. It's it's so much work. It's so slow. You don't really notice your improvement. You notice it by looking at your old work years later. That's on some file on your computer that you haven't looked at, and you're oh God, and then you delete it, right? That's that's how you know how much you've improved. All right. So, and it doesn't matter what level you're at. It doesn't matter if you're not that good or if you're amazing. The amount of work that you have to put in doesn't change. So one example is Casey Neistat. I love Casey Neistat. Does everyone know Casey Neistat? Right? So when a lot of people look at Casey Neistat, they think YouTube vlogger, They think like really cool guy. When I look at Casey Neistat, I think like, holy shit, this guy only works. He works so much. Like this here is from one of his YouTube videos, which is a diagram that he made of how his average workday is. So you can see here from like 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. he exercises. From 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. he works. Then he's got some family time from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Then he does vlogging from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. And then he only sleeps for like 6 hours or something, or 5 hours or something like that. And this is common, right? Like you look at people like the very beautiful, what's this guy's name? Chris Hemsworth, that's it. And like you see, oh, this guy's so lucky, he's a movie star and he's doing nothing for so much money. But I bet you anything, this guy works his ass off. Maybe a bit less now than before, but to get there, you have to work a ton. I bet you he still works the most. I bet you he like so many people that you just, if you look at them at a superficial level, you don't really see the work. And if you really think about everything that goes into their careers, and if you really start to appreciate it, then And when you see the world in that way, and then you put it to yourself, and you'll realize this is how much I have to work, because it's true, right? I had a huge shock when I first went into the work world. So I told you the story about how I got offered that job at Wonderman. I only lasted a month. I got let go after a month at that job because the shock was so big at how fast you had to be, at how precise you had to be, at how it's a big shock going from school to work, and it only gets more intense as you progress through your career and as your ambitions get higher. I've talked about work in a kind of general way, so let me tell you guys about some of the specific, because I don't want this to seem like it's the secret or something, like you just have to wish, and it let me give some specific ways that you guys can improve, that I've tried to divide it up. Hopefully I haven't missed anything. First thing is, okay, so you work from 9 to 5, let's say, or you go to school from 9 to 5. So like I said, like think about Casey Neistat's timeline and realize that there is like I said, it's not a 9 to 5 workday. You got to put in as many hours as possible without going insane. You need some time to yourself too, obviously. But here's some of the things that you can do throughout your day. And hopefully, ideally, you enjoy them too, so you're killing two birds with one stone. You're having fun and you're working. So one thing is to read industry publications, books, read design books, read websites. This is like huge. You want to always know what's up, because you are only as good as the well that you can draw from. The more knowledge that you have of anything, really, it can be specifically design, it can be advertising publications like Adweek, it can be things like that. But really, any experience that you could, like TV shows that you watch, places that you've been to, like these are things that make you a richer person, and therefore you can have richer ideas. Another thing that's really important is the crowd that you hang out with. If you really are ambitious, then you want to hang out with the most talented people, because you'll feed off of each other. You'll feed off of each other's passion and also off of each other's knowledge. And then you'll also work more together. So this is something that I'm saying here about school, but really it extends like your whole life. Like when I'm at work, I want to be hanging out with the most talented people in the industry. And these are people, it's not just good for connections. Like I hate to even say networking. Obviously, it's good for that too. But like, people think about networking first. If you think about everything else first, the networking will just happen. I never try to network. I just like design, so I hang around people that I like who happen to be designers, and then I'm networking. Like, another thing, which I put a star next to because it's maybe the most important thing here, is do passion projects. So this is where you're gonna get some of your best work, some of your most important work. Like half of my portfolio is not even stuff that I did at my work. It's stuff that I just did on the side. Like I made a board game, just finished an expansion to a board game, making some video games now, making a cool website for my photographer friend, like this experimental website. But yeah, it keeps you passionate, because the stuff that you do at work or in school, there's always compromises, because there's always a client, there's always some sort of intermediary that's telling you what to do, and that's fucking up your vision, you know? So when you're doing your own things, then you can do whatever you want, right? It's very important. And like I say, it keeps the engine going, like the passionate engine, if you know what I mean. Another thing is going to creative events like this one. There's a lot of good stuff too on YouTube, to be honest. Like, there's a lot of good talks. I watch, I really recommend Michael Beirut's talks on YouTube. He's a really great design thinker. I'll get into that a little bit more afterwards. But yeah, you don't really have to go to events. It's good because you meet people, but like definitely watching creative content. Updating your portfolio. So updating your portfolio really, I do it every step along the way. It's really important. It keeps you disciplined, but also it like, by keeping your eye on your portfolio and by really caring about it, it's kind of like a way to like push you to want to improve, because you're like, you always want to improve your portfolio. It's like, it's a way to set some goals for yourself. And it's really important for getting jobs, and jobs help you improve more than anything. Like, you improve more quickly in a job than at school. Sending emails is another thing that's connected to job. There's an art to sending emails, by the way. That could be a whole talk in itself. Sending a good email is one of the most underrated, most important things that you can do. Basically, it comes back to lagom, like I was talking about before. It's keeping it short and sweet and to the point. Still having personality in there, not making it dry, like, hello, my name is Steven Preisman. I am an art director for 6 years. I would like a job at your place, right? Like, you want to put in like a little bit of personality. You don't want it to be prescriptive. But definitely sending out emails constantly to places that you're interested, to people that you admire. You never know where things will lead to. I just recently, I emailed this one video game company just blindly in San Francisco, and they're interested in talking to me further. I emailed, like, this is one of the great equalizers, actually, sending emails. Things are so competitive now that by sending out emails, people are so much more reachable than ever. So, and so few people actually do this as much as they ought to. So sending emails is a really great equalizer if you're doing it all the time. Another way is to gain experiences outside of design. So like traveling, go to museums, shows, read books, play video games, just gathering inspiration. It's really important. Like, I spend my whole day just trying to gather in creative shit, whatever it is, like books, video games, any medium, doesn't matter. Movies, love movies. Especially going to the movies where you can just like fully pay attention to a movie. Blade Runner was awesome, by the way. Everyone should go see Blade Runner. But that's really important. And going back to what I talked to before, constant mindfulness / introspection. So as you do all of these things, you want to think about what you just did and how you can improve it. So for example, the structure of my emails has gotten so much better over the years. I've refined them. I found a structure that works. With my portfolio, I'm constantly like figuring out a better way to have my portfolio so that I can update it more easily and so they can be more clear to people. Doing passion projects. Every project that I'm doing, I'm thinking like, what could I do better? What did this person do that's good? What can I take from that? What can I learn from it for my next experience? Throughout the whole thing, you don't want to just blindly do things. You want to be thinking deeply along the way with the goal of improvement. Sorry if I sound like, I'm intentionally being repetitive, by the way, because I really want to burn this idea into your heads. It's so important. It's like I said, it's the tool that lets everything else get better. Just thinking honestly. And then the last thing is rest. You don't want to like kill yourself. So you want to like get some sleep and like do some things that are like have nothing to do with anything. Like, like watch like Top Gun or something like while smoking weed, or I don't know. Like, you want some of that. Or sleeping, yeah. But so those are ways to improve. I'm sure there's other ways too, but the main gist that you can take from this is try to make the most use of each day. You only have so many days. Make the most use of each hour, each minute of each hour of each day. Because yeah, shit's competitive out there. And so where I'm gonna go to from here is basically talking about how you can compete in a smart way. Right? Because before what I'm talking about like Michael Beirut, and you're like, oh, but Michael Beirut is so good at this, and this person is so good at that, and like, how can I compete against them directly? And the answer is to not compete against them directly, but it's to try to find out what it is that you're really good at and make that into your style, right? Like, there's always going to be some generic stuff that you have to do that's outside of your style for work, but when it comes to your trade, your stuff that you're really proud of, that is the stuff that you put in portfolio that gets you the job, you want to focus on your strengths. So here's an example. This is an illustration from Tavis Coburn. And Tavis Coburn is ridiculous. I will never draw like Tavis Coburn. I don't know how good you guys are. Maybe some of you guys are amazing, but like very few of us will draw like this guy. So why would you even try, right? One thing that I'm good at is color. I feel like I have a good sense of color. Another thing is I feel like I have a good sense of geometry. Like I feel like I have a good sense of spacing, of gestalt. So I'm not good at type. I'm not the best at type. I try. I'm still trying to improve it. But what I'm good at, I'm good at certain things, and then I put those things into my work. So this is like an example. The colors are so washed out. But this is like an illustration I did. So it's obviously nothing like this, guys, but it's pretty cool, and it uses the things that I'm good at. So I really do feel like I've been thinking about it, and like limitations really are one of the things that lead to style. People think like of strengths as something that lead to style, but really in a lot of ways it is your limitations. Like for example, we have Mario Brothers here, the original Mario Brothers, and they didn't have a lot of memory. So they couldn't use a lot of colors. They couldn't have a lot of sprites. So for example, one thing you'll notice is the cloud is the same sprite as the bushes, but just the color is changed. This whole style, like the fact that they couldn't get high resolution on games, forced them to create this style, which now has become a style that people do intentionally now today. Another example of someone with like a really cool style is Paul Neiman. Maybe you guys watch Abstract on Netflix. So this guy, Paul Neiman, his whole thing is finding out how he can make an object into another object. And this is his thing. And he's really good at recognizing, at seeing shapes as other things, and he's made this into his style. So think about what it is that you are good at, and emphasize on that. Don't worry that you're not good at certain things. Still try to improve those things, but yeah. The other thing I want to talk about is another way that you can make up for a lack of technical proficiency. Like I'm not like when I say lack, I mean like compared to the greatest greats. Like sometimes going on the internet can be really demoralizing because you see these like crazy people that like are just so good. I cry sometimes just going on certain webs. I just cry by myself. And and another place where you can make up for it is, other than originality, is the ideas, unique ideas. Not just unique superficial stuff, but unique ideas. So for example, here's one of my all-time favorite ideas. This is my friend, this is Sagmeister's old website. You guys know Sagmeister, of course. Everyone is like obligated to know about Sagmeister. So what happened was he had this website where it was a live camera, top down, of the office, and it would refresh like every 8 seconds. And so what my friend did was he hacked his website, but the way he hacked it was he did a real life hack. If you notice over here in the corner, see the top left corner? See how it says Nick Hum over there? What he did was he rented a truck. He painted his name, which is also his logo, on the side of the truck. And then he actually drove the truck while his brother was waiting by the computer to take a picture, a screenshot at that moment. Then he sent the screenshot by Twitter to Sagmeister, and he actually got a reply from him in an interview. So he's like, wow, Nick, this is pretty damn's good. He doesn't spell well. He's Austrian, whatever. I'd like to meet up with you. 1,000 greetings. And yeah, so we got an interview that way. Didn't get the job, but whatever. But yeah, like, so what I'm trying to say here, the overall gist of what I'm trying to get at is try to differentiate yourself, right? Focus on the things that you're good at. Do unique things. If things are different enough, if they're interesting enough, you don't have to be like the most amazing designer in the world. If you are, that's a bonus. It's not even the most important thing. The idea is the most important thing. So this brings me to an advertising legend, Alex Bogusky. You guys ever hear of Alex Bogusky? This is him, obviously. He was big in the 90s when it was all about that, like, you know, got to be a creative director that like rides a BMX bike, like, whoa, you know. And so he was that cool guy. But his whole philosophy that seems pretty obvious now, but somehow it was revolutionary for its time, was whenever you think of an idea, like so you have an idea, you're like, all right, how do I know this is a good idea, right? I ask my friends, everyone thinks everything I say is great, or I don't know who to ask, or I don't know, I can't trust my own judgment. So the way you know if an idea is great, the way he did it specifically, was any ideas that anyone had at his agency, they had to write it as a press release. And if it was a press release that like you would, if you read the press release and it seemed like something interesting that people would want to put like in newspapers, or like if it's something headline worthy that you would click on, I guess in modern terms, I could say, if this is like something interesting enough as a news as news, then it's a good idea. If it's not to that level, it's not that good. So, I mean, that's pretty harsh criticism, but this is kind of, if you're really ambitious, this is the level that you have to think on. And like anything that you create, like can be promoted in such a, if it's good enough, it can be promoted in such a way that people can be interested in. An example is this pizza. Okay, I'll tell you a story. Very quick story. My friend Vicky is an amazing photographer. She has all these photographs of real macro shots, like close up of pizzas. And she was like, do people still use screensavers? And I was like, no, not really. But I saw the shots, and they were such amazing macro shots of pizzas. Here, I can show them. This is still a work in progress, by the way. So these are her shots, these super macro shots of pizzas. And this thing is like kind of glitching out. 1 second. Turn your computer into pizza. And the whole thing was, the idea was already cool. Like it's cool to have pizza as your desktop background. And then what I tried to do was think of what's the most interesting way to present it to people. Because the same idea can be good or bad just purely on presentation. So we're making this into a website right now, Desktoppings, where you can actually click through these different amazing pizza desktops. And the name is really good, Desktoppings, right? It's catchy. And then when it's all said and done, there's going to be a shop. I'm going to be opening up a shop where you can actually, it's not done yet, but you'll be able to like get these patterns on like bed sheets and shower curtains and everything. And then I got like hookups at like BuzzFeed and like some other like Herb, like this marijuana social site. It would be perfect for them. And something that was relatively simple can be made into something more interesting just like on how it's presented, right? Just by taking it to the next level. So that's what I'm talking about, like how can you make something interesting enough? I'm not saying it has to be the biggest newsworthy story in the world, but at least something that people care about. Would a stranger care about this? It's a good question to ask when you have an idea. So I'm going to read this quote from a pretty legendary copywriter named Tom Miguel. Don't be distracted by anything. The work is what counts. There are a lot of things that can get in your way, that take up your time and your emotional and intellectual energy. None of them account for anything. They mean nothing. The only thing in the final analysis at this stage of the game that really counts is the work. The work is everything. The years that I spent in advertising, I saw an awful lot of people who had the potential to be good lose a lot of their ability to distraction, to politics, to fear, and to who has the bigger office. You'll get the bigger office. You'll make the money. Anything you want will happen. But sometimes it's hard for people to see that when they're in the middle of it. It looks like it's incredibly complicated. Well, it's not complicated at all. In fact, it's so uncomplicated, it's amazing. All it is about the work. Finally, if you do the work, people will notice that and you will get what you want. That's it. It's as simple as that. So it's kind of like The Secret, but like with actually having to work for it rather than just wish it. It's like, that's kind of the... and I guess I have here final thoughts. The way I see things, I mean, I have a mathematical background, and I really see things in numbers. I see things in words too, but a lot of times I see things in numbers. And what I mean by that is I'm always trying to play the percentages. I'm always trying to, like, whatever move that I make, whatever agency I go to, whatever I decide to be my next project, whatever I'm thinking about will be the theme of this project, every single little minute detail. I'm thinking about it and I'm trying to play the percentages and do the thing that has the greatest chance of leading to success. And it may seem very insignificant, one thing at a time. It's kind of like what the dude, I always forget his name. What is it? Tom McGilligan. It's kind of like what he talked about. Like, it's like when you're in the middle of it, it seems crazy, right? But like, the way I think, like in blackjack, the house actually has only like a 0.5 or like 1% advantage if you play the cards right. If you don't, it's like 3-4%, whatever. Anyways, it's the advantage is not that big, but accumulated over a long enough time, then it's a sure thing that they're going to win, right? I can't promise that everyone here will be like a creative director or the next Michael Beirut, or even that I will be, even though I'm trying my best. I'm always trying my best. But what I can say is that if you're always working hard, and if you, as long as you're passionate, and as long as you're aiming for something, you know, and the percentages will lead you upward, and you will be proud of yourself. You'll have no regrets. That's kind of the point that I'm trying to get at here. So that's it. Thank you. That's another. I just randomly found this on Google also. I hope that was clear enough. I hope that was clear. Was that clear? Cool.
All right. Thank you very much, Stephen.